Marsha Silverman, 15 Rooney Court. It really saddens me and disappoints me to be up here. About 1 year ago, I came up here at the budget hearing and addressed everybody at the public hearing where you're supposed to listen to the public. And I said a number of things that were concerning me with last year's budget, and I come here tonight 1 year later and I see many of the exact same things. Many of the things that Thomas DiNapoli, the state controller, has questioned and warned against. So I'll just point out a couple because I know that you didn't listen last year, but I mean, I might as well try. But when I came up here last year, I said your 2014 actuals were about $2.5 million over your budget, and you were just carrying that through into 2015 and then going up from there. 2015, it hasn't even been mentioned that your projected new 2015 expenses are now about $2.5 million over your 2015 budget that you passed. Last year, when I said this, you said, oh, I inherited the 2014 budget. It wasn't mine. There were unexpected expenses. This year, it is your budget, and you're $2.5 million over budget in expenses. My question is, when will this excessive spending ever end? I know in my life, when I have an unexpected expense come up, say my car breaks down, I budget for it. I have to cut somewhere else. I can't just go and bond for it and spend more and more and more money. I think that's how most of us live. Most of us live that when there's something unexpected that comes up and you have a budget, you have to reduce somewhere else. You can't just go with an open checkbook like you've been running the city for the past 2 years. It's extremely disappointing. It's extremely scary because our taxes are going to go up, and what's to say? I mean, history is the best predictor of the future. In the last 2 years, you've been $2.5 million over budget and expenses. What's to say that in 2016, what you have on this page, you're not going to come in $2.5 million over this budget, even though it's already up about $1.5 to $2 million over your projected 2015. I've asked time and time again over the past year and a half, why don't you do a 3 to 5 year outlook so that you can budget in the true impacts of a long-term waterfront if you think it's going to be so beneficial? Budget in the pilots that you're going to give them. Budget in that TIF that you're going to give them, and see really what it will do to the taxpayers of the city over the next 3, 5, or 10 years. If you think it's going to be so good, why don't you show that to us? It has never been shown to anybody. The assumptions that have been shown in the EIS from the developer show a benefit, and in the finding statement, I've said this at the planning board meetings, I've said this in front of this council, the assumptions that the planning board makes is no tax abatements. The assumptions that this council makes are maybe a $100 million TIF, maybe tax pilots, and you guys, I asked you, do you communicate? And frankly, the chairman of the planning board committee said, no, we do not communicate with the council. So you're making different assumptions. There has to be one financial plan for the city and not just a 1 year plan. It really should be 3, 5, 10 years. That's what good businessmen do, and you've never done that. I've been asking politely, and you just ignore it. And I really honestly don't even know why you hold public hearings, because we come up here, I'm saying almost the same thing I said about a year ago, and I haven't been listened to. So that's all I have to say for tonight. Thank you.
Sal, Marsha, you want to hang there for a second? Okay.
Sure.
Sal, you want to explain to
Marsha,
about the $2.5 million?
Yeah, when you're talking about this $2.5 million difference, just let me understand where you're coming from. Are you on page 4 of the budget book?
Yeah, I'm looking at the appropriations, which for layman's terms are the expenses, yes.
So on page 4?
Correct.
Okay. And you're comparing what? The projected numbers for 2015 to the budget column for 2015?
Right.
Okay. The budget column there is the adopted budget from 2015.
Correct.
The projected column includes the borrowing money that we've done during the course of the year for tax certs, for litigations, for termination payments. Those are not included in that budget column.
Right, that's my point. You're spending more than the budget.
No, let me finish.
Okay.
those bonded items become revenue, and the appropriations are increased during the course of the year. So the budget gets amended during the course of the year. Right now, with those amendments in there, we have an adjusted budget of $75.1 million. Okay? My projection for the year is $74.9 million. So based on my adjusted appropriations, we will be underspending the adjusted budget by the end of the year.
Right, but that will be over what this council voted on a year ago.
No, it's not over what they voted on. It was over what they adopted, but then it was amended during the course of the year, which they voted on by their bond resolutions.
Right, they're spending more than what you did a year ago. You are. Whether it's through bond, you're spending more than the budget you passed a year
But
ago.
the budget was amended during the course of the year.
Right, it's amended. I am agreeing with you. We're agreeing.
So
And
we're
you
not
are spending
overspending more than our budget.
And again, when I spend more on something that's I save somewhere else. That's how most people operate within a budget,
But we received additional revenue to pay for those expenses
through bonding.
through bonds.
That's not revenue. We have
It
to
is
pay
revenue.
that back.
In
It's
municipal
revenue
accounting, it
technically.
is revenue.
Right. In accounting terms, for the rest of us, it's putting something on a credit card and we have to pay it back. Who has to pay it back? The taxpayers. That's why I'm asking for a longer-term plan, because you're saying it's revenue today, but we don't have to just pay that back. We have to pay that back with interest tomorrow. So it's not revenue. Yes, technically, you're talking about accounting practices. I'd say 95% of the people here probably don't understand accounting practices. It's extra spending that the taxpayers have to foot. It's not just that $1 million, $2 million, $3 million of bonds. It's $1 million plus interest, and our interest rate is horrendous because we're almost at junk bond status. Moody's has us rated at a Baa3, which is one notch above junk bond status, so whatever interest rates we're getting on those is ridiculous.
And how long has that rating been in effect?
A number of years, but you
Okay.
could start improving it.
So nothing changes overnight.
Well, you could
Okay.
start somewhere. You
And
have
we're
to
heading-
start somewhere.
we're heading in the
You're
right direction.
continuing, and again, the controller's
You
report
know,
says
you can do it. You can do it other ways, but we're not trying.
Yeah,
to,
you can do it other ways, by a fire sale off of waterfront property and plug a gap for 1 year. Plug your excessive spending for 1 year, and what's going to happen next year and the next year? You're going to have another waterfront to sell?
It's not just going to be one shot. There's going to be more revenue that comes
Again,
into
then
the
why
city.
can't you show that? Why can't you
It is-
show
it
that,
is-
and how?
It is being worked on.
And
It
you've
is being
mentioned
worked on.
pilots time and time again. You've mentioned pilots. You talk about a TIF. The
it's all- you know, when it-
potential
when-
revenue, have said time and time again that you are going to give it away. So if
No.
you keep sitting there saying there will be, I think there will be. Well, I don't believe you, and I think most people don't believe you. Can you show it to us? Because that's what the public wants to see.
Anything.
It's called transparency in government, which is one of the platforms you ran on 2 years ago.
No
You
one.
ran on fiscal responsibility, stopping overdevelopment, and transparency. You have done none of those campaign promises 2 years later.
None of the